Chapter 95. Goodbye, third young master. Hiss. The crowd sucked in a mouthful of cool air. This young man, who suddenly appeared, was able to spar with Zhao Wuji and not lose a single punch each other. It was really something. Definitely another supreme powerhouse of the young generation of the great Tang cultivation sector. Li Yuanba. The current you is still not my opponent. Wait until the Heavenly Tao Sect's disciple acceptance ceremony begins, then come back to challenge me. Zhao Wuji coldly looked at the youth opposite him. This was a young strong man who was about the same age as Zhao Wuji. He had an upright figure. He was a head taller than Zhao Wuji. His whole body was full of muscles. One could tell at a glance that it was filled with powerful strength. Under his thick eyebrows, a pair of berserk eyes shot out a palpitating, overbearing aura. Li Yuanba. It's actually him, one of the four masters of the imperial capital. A cry of shock came out from the crowd, and the crowd was incomparably shocked when they heard Zhao Wuji say the name of the visitor. The person who came was actually Li Yuanba, one of the 4G of the imperial capital. No wonder he was able to easily block Zhao Wuji's strike. As Li Yuanba listened to Zhao Wuji's words, anger flickered in his eyes, and his gaze flickered as he said, "Just wait, I will definitely defeat you." "You don't have that chance," Zhao Wuji coldly said. Li Yuanba was angry in his heart when he heard this, but he did not say anything more. The current him was indeed not Zhao Wuji's opponent. There was no need to make a fool of himself. His gaze couldn't help but sweep towards the crowd, and one of the figures attracted his attention. That was Kang Qian. Kang Qian was currently teaming up with Lei Yun, Liu Suifeng, and Hua Wanyong to fight against a black and white zombie. The four of them were all peak youth powerhouses, and they attracted a lot of attention amongst the crowd. The black and white zombie is comparable to the peak of the 9th level of the Jidan stage. Usually one-on-one Kang Qian is not a match, but with Lei Yun, Liu Suifeng, Hua Wanyong, three people cooperation, Kang Qian secretly performed star-sucking magic, devouring black and white zombies' corpse chi. The four people gradually occupy the upper hand. In the end, the little girl could not see past their speed was too slow. Waving the coffin board over, the five people combined their efforts, and in just a few moments, they exterminated this black and white zombie. The crowd was shocked. A black and white zombie that was comparable to a Yuanying stage was just destroyed by a few young people. "Who is that kid?" Li Yuanba pointed at Kang Qian and asked Zhao Wuji on the opposite side. "Kang Qian," Zhao Wuji said indifferently. "It's him." Li Yuanba's eyes shrunk slightly. Then he sneered. "I heard Uncle Seven say that there's a kid in Heavy Iron City who doesn't know the heights of heaven and earth who wants to challenge him for a year and a half. So it should be this kid, HMPH. I'm afraid your seventh uncle isn't his opponent." Zhao Wuji sniffed and laughed coldly. "HMPH. I want to see how strong he is." Li Yuanba snorted coldly at his words and walked over towards Kang Qian. Kang Qian, who was recovering his true essence with Lei Yun and the others, steeply felt a pair of sharp gazes sweeping towards him, and slightly tilted his head to look, but he saw a tall, thick-browed young man walking towards him, and there was an icy look flashing in this person's eyes. Who was this person? Why did it seem like he was rushing towards me? Kang Qian was instantly puzzled in his heart. He was not an idiot. Naturally, he could feel the hostility in Li Yuanba's eyes. "Hey, Li Yuanba, why is he here as well, on the side?" Lei Yun was surprised. Liu Suifeng also exclaimed in shock. "Surprisingly, it's this pervert. He's here to find Zhao Wuji, right?" Kang Qian was instantly puzzled. Li Yuanba, who was that? Looking at Liu Suifeng and Lei Yun's expressions, this Li Yuanba didn't seem simple. Seeing Kang Qian's puzzled look, Flower thinking wrong at the side explained. Li Yuanba is one of the four masters of the imperial capital, a strong person who is on par with Zhao Wuji. When Kang Qian heard this, it suddenly dawned on him that he finally knew where this Li Yuanba came from. Li Yuanba walked slowly between his steps He exuded a palpitating, domineering aura. His gaze was like a blade, staring fiercely at Kang Chon, his sharp eyes chilling one's heart. Kang Chon tilted his head and looked straight. His eyes were calm and collected, without the slightest fear. For this youth in front of him, he had an instinctive aversion. Perhaps the other party was from the Li family. When he thought of that arrogant Li family's seventh elder in Heavy Iron City, a wave of hatred surged in Kang Chon's heart. He had no favorable feelings towards the Li family at that time. Or else he wouldn't have set a 3-year war contract with that seventh elder. Calculating the time, there was still 1.5 years left before the 3-year war contract. I wonder if that Li family's seventh elder still remembered himself as a small person from the Heavy Iron City. When he waited for the imperial capital, he would probably be surprised. Kang Chon sneered in his heart. At this moment, Li Yuanba had already walked in front of him, his gaze coldly gazing at him as an unrivaled domineering aura overwhelmed him. At this time, even if Lei Yun, Liu Suifeng, and Hua Wanyong were idiots, they knew that the other party was rushing towards Kang Chon. And some of the surrounding crowds who were watching could also see the gunpowder atmosphere here. In the air, a tense atmosphere immediately filled the air. Li Yuanba stared coldly at Kang Chon and said disdainfully, "Are you the boy who doesn't know the heights of heaven and earth that seventh uncle said? I would like to see what kind of backbone you have that you dare to challenge my seventh uncle." Saying that, Li Yuanba's aura surged as a powerful force pressed in. His strength was very powerful, not much worse than Zhao Wuji, and his aura was suffocating. Liu Suifeng, Hua Wanyong, and Lei Yun were immediately sent flying, unable to approach within 100 meters of him. With young supreme figures like the Imperial Capital 4, the Great Tang 7 was still a level behind. The crowd watching around them immediately boiled. Li Yuanba was actually going to take a shot at Kang Chon. This was big news. So what if I am? Kang Chon motioned to resist. Silver-colored true essence filled his body, resisting the oppressive force coming from Li Yuanba's body. Although his current strength was inferior to Li Yuanba's, the battle intent in his eyes was heavenly, without the slightest bit of critical fear. "It is. Then let me see your bottom." Kang Chon's eyes made Li Yuanba very uncomfortable. He coldly snorted and was about to strike at Kang Chon. The breath on his body, as well as coalesced to the extreme, both to perform a shocking strike. The surrounding crowd instantly closed their breaths. A wonderful peak youth battle was about to begin. Kang Chon's eyes were heavy as he stared in anticipation. However, right at this moment, a long whistle came from the sky. "Li Yuanba, if you dare to bully my brother, I, Jin San Xiao, will make it difficult for you to rest in peace." An icy cold voice came from the sky, followed by 2 figures stepping into the air. These were 2 young men, about the same age as Li Yuanba and the others. When Kang Chon saw one of them, his gaze instantly shrank, and a hint of joy appeared in his eyes. Just now, listening to the voice, he felt familiar, and now he could finally determine the identity of the visitor. Right at this moment, one of the figures slapped a palm at Li Yuanba. The majestic palm force shook the sky and the earth. The terrifying true essence was like the Yangtze River. It came, rushing in a vast manner. The blazing light illuminated the entire heaven and earth. The crowd was shocked. This was another young supreme. "Jin San Xiao, you are not my opponent." A bright starlight erupted in Li Yuanba's eyes as he met him with a fist, and the heavens and earth shook as the matchless fist power clashed with the palm power, erupting in brilliant colors. In a blaze of light, the crowd saw 2 youths descending from the sky. One of them was well-mannered and relatively thin-looking, but a pair of narrow eyes flashed with a palpitating light. The other was a short, fat man with a smile piled up on his face all the time. But there was a cold light flickering in that smile, a typical smile hiding a sword. When Kang Chon saw the familiar short, fat man, he immediately exclaimed, "Third fatty, why are you here?" The person who came was none other than Jin San Xiao, and after many days, They met once again. Jin Sanshao looked a little embarrassed. He said with a bitter face, "I say, brother, why are you tearing me down as soon as we meet? The title 3 fatty can be called in private. Don't fall on my face in front of the public eye. As for why I am here, that would have to ask you, brother. Your kid made such a big noise in Fengdu City. How could brother I not come? Haha. It's been a long time, you're still the same." Kang Chon laughed out loud and hugged Jin Sanshao. This girl is full of fat meat, almost didn't crush him to death. The crowd on the side also reacted at this time. The person who came was actually Jin Sanshao, also one of the 4G of the imperial capital. And then look at the skinny youth who came down with Jin Sanshao. It should be Sun Ji, the other one of the 4G of the imperial capital. In this way, in this Fengdu mountain, the 4 masters of the imperial capital gathered together. It cannot be said that it is not lively. Liu Suifeng and Lei Yun were astonished. They didn't expect that Kang Chon not only had a grudge against Li Yuanba, but also knew Jin Sanshao. Hua Xiangrong was strange. She knew Kang Chon earlier and had long guessed that Kang Chon was a young man who had just made his debut. So how could he know Jin Sanshao, who had long since shaken the cultivation world of the Great Tang Dynasty? Regardless of the doubts of the crowd, at this moment Kang Chon and Sanshao were reunited and were happy. However, Li Yuanba on the side obviously didn't let him have his way and coldly forced his way in. "Jin Sanshao, what do you mean by this?" Li Yuanba coldly questioned. Kang Chon sank his face and stared coldly, his gaze cold. Although he was currently not Li Yuanba's opponent, it did not mean that he was afraid. On the contrary, his heart was high on battle spirit. The big deal was to attract the heavenly tribulation in advance and break through the Jidan stage. By then it was not certain who would win and who would lose. "What do you mean?" "That's for you to ask." Jin Sanshao took a step forward, blocking in front of Kang Chon, sneering, "When my brother and your 7th uncle made a date to fight, it was in front of everyone. And Jin personally promised to testify to it. If you want to, take a shot at him now. Are you admitting defeat on behalf of your 7th uncle?" The crowd was surprised at his words, seemingly not expecting Kang Chon to have an appointment with the Li family's 7th elder. One must know that the Li family's 7th elder was a strong man at the 7th level of the Jidan stage, whereas more than a year ago Kang Chon did not even know what realm he was in. But he dared to challenge such a strong man. No wonder he had such an achievement. Li Yuanba's face was a bit ugly. After all, he was a junior and had to take into account his 7th uncle's face. Now in front of so many people, if he made a move to deal with Kang Chon, others would definitely think that his 7th uncle knew that he couldn't defeat Kang Chon, and that was why he asked him to make a move. Furthermore, after all, Kang Chon had made an appointment with his 7th uncle to fight first. Before that, any person from the Li family who made a move against Kang Chon would be disgraced. "Good, I'll give you face today, and will no longer count, HMPH. Li Yuanba's face changed a few times before he finally let out a cold snort and left in large strides. At this time, Sun Ji, who had come down with Jin Sanshao, smiled faintly and said, "Sanshao, let's go as well, or else the one above should be angry." Jin Sanshao sniffed with some palpitations and glanced at the huge ship above, nodded and then said to Kang Chon, who was on the side, "Brother, we'll talk some other time when you come to the imperial capital." Kang Chon nodded. Jin Sanshao and Sun Ji left and converged with Li Yuanba and Zhao Wuji. These 4 people were known as the 4 masters of the imperial capital. Now that they were gathered together in front of the crowd, they couldn't even think of not drawing attention to themselves. Almost everyone's gazes were directed towards them. Zhao Wuji lightly glanced at Jin Sanshao and Sun Ji, who were walking towards him. Then his eyes looked towards the black and white zombies rampaging below, and he coldly said, "One person at a time." Saying that, he rushed out first, meeting the nearest black and white zombie with a punch, and instantly, a shocking battle erupted. Li Yuanba let out a cold smile and also sought out a black and white zombie, and the two sides fought furiously. Jin Sanshao and Sun Ji looked at each other, and also each fought against a black and white zombie. These four young supreme beings at the pinnacle of the Great Tang demonstrated true power in front of the crowd, as they single-handedly took on black and white zombies close to the Yuanying stage, their prowess momentarily unrivaled. The many people watching the battle were all shocked